You know that feeling when you want to express something, but every time you want to do it, you pull back. Or you want to put it out, you want to share it with the world, and then all of a sudden you sabotage yourself and don't put it out there. Or you're already in the phase of expressing yourself, putting content out there, putting your art out there, putting your work out there and sharing it with the world. But every time it gains traction, you pull back. And here's why. The fear of being seen, as so many people call it. But I haven't heard anyone talking about this in this way so far, because I myself recently had a deeper understanding of it through my own reflection and my own introspection. The thing is that you're not necessarily afraid of being seen. You're afraid of showing up as your full self in the world because it doesn't feel safe for you, because you feel fear that you might be judged, that you might be ridiculed, that you might be even attacked by other people, the people that see you. Because when you're in public, when you step into the light, people can actually see you and people are able to attack you. They're able to point at you. They're able to see all that you are, especially if you show up as your authentic self, because you show your vulnerable side. Or maybe somewhere along your path, you learned that being vulnerable, being open is dangerous, because maybe you opened up to somebody in your past and then they betrayed you, or they misused your kindness, or they did something foul, maybe they just set you up or something. And that experience is probably still living inside of you without you being aware of it. And when I looked inside of myself, because I noticed a pattern with me, that every time I gained some traction with my social media, even if it was small, whether it was on my music channel or on my speaking channel or teaching channel, where I'm just sharing my concepts and my tools and everything that I've learned along my path, every time I caught some traction and noticed things are moving on, I noticed that a part inside of me pulled back. And all of a sudden it felt awkward. All of a sudden I felt like, okay, what am I doing? Like, why is... I don't feel confident in this anymore. Not even not confident, but it all of a sudden felt weird. And then sometimes I ghosted for weeks, sometimes even for months. And now I'm at the place where I notice it, and sometimes the feeling still comes up, but I move with it, regardless of it. And I can point it out because I know what it is. And in my experience, it's this. I grew up in Vienna, Austria, and it's a predominantly Caucasian white country. My mother is Austrian too, so I have a white mother, and my father is Nigerian, so an African father. And in my childhood, I always heard that I should go back to where I come from, that I'm a foreigner, that I don't belong here. So as a child, I already had the feeling like I don't belong anywhere, and like I'm not accepted as I am, not accepted in the tribe, so to say. And often felt like I have to adjust myself to be accepted, that I have to fit in, that people accept me for some reason or some persona that I'm actually not. And at some point I let go of that, especially along my music journey, because in the beginning when I started making music, I also tried to make music that's trendy, to fit in, to be cool. I started out with trap music. Actually, not with trap music. I started with deep conscious rap, but then it shifted to trap music because I wanted to be the cool guy, the tough guy, to be accepted and adored and accepted in the music industry, so to say. But in 2020, that shifted for me, where I noticed, okay, actually, the music I'm listening to is not giving me anything. I don't want to hear about them standing in the club, having all the bottles, having all the chicks, shooting someone down. That's not me. Like this is not serving me, and this is not even what I want to experience in my life. So why am I listening to that? Started questioning that. And then I asked myself, what am I putting out? And I almost stopped with music because I felt like I'm not cool enough. I don't fit into this whole thing. And long story short, I almost stopped. But then I decided, you know what? I just make music that comes from my heart. I just express my art and who I am fully, and make sure that I extend love and talk about my own experience and don't try to impress nobody, but simply use my music as a tool to share love and to raise the consciousness, because music is very powerful, and it's also frequency and vibration and affirmation, because whatever you listen to repeatedly goes into your subconscious. But the main point I wanted to say here is that I let go of that and allowed myself to be myself. And then things started to go very well. All of a sudden, new doors opened up. I've been placed on Spotify editorial playlists. I work with great producers. And then I released my album. And my album it was my first big piece of art. I would say the first project I actually put out in the world. And before I put it out, I felt so strange because it was so vulnerable. It talked about my life story. It's called The Way of Law, like the name of this channel. And I just asked myself, do I even want to do music still? Is this me? Like, do I even want to put this out into the world? Will people judge me? Like, all of this stuff. And I didn't know why. I was so excited to put this out, but shortly before I put it out, all of a sudden, all of these fears came up, and I almost sabotaged myself into not putting it out. And then I put it out, and it felt good to put it out because I got over that fear. But then it was another strange phase. But what I figured out there is because of that vulnerability, because of me actually putting my story out, because of me showing up in the world, because of me spreading my message through the music, I felt scared. Because all of a sudden, people could have access to my wounds, especially if they listen properly to what I'm saying in the music, you know? And the same pattern now showed up, I'd say in the past year, repeatedly with the teaching side. Because a few years ago, I decided, actually in the past year, I started doing it properly. But I decided that I want to expand my purpose, that I want to express more and also share messages with the world. And decided to start teaching, decided to start sharing things, and also decided to start working with people, and also start a business around my experience and around the things that I've transformed inside of myself, because I know it has the power to change people's lives in a positive way. Not in the saying like I'm going to change your life, but I know that this work that I'm sharing is very powerful and it goes inside. And I feel like everyone has a unique gift, and if you have a gift, you should also start sharing that with the world. And ideally, we have a lot of conscious entrepreneurs and business owners who create things that are really transforming people and are moving with integrity. And that's also what I want to inspire the people who listen to this channel to do. But the second pattern, the fear of being seen that showed up in my life, was that all of a sudden, every time things gain traction, I pull back. And recently I asked myself, why is this feeling always coming up? And then I noticed, first of all, because of my childhood experience of being a foreigner in my own country. And the second one was because I grew up with a schizophrenic brother. And my home was very unsafe. I learned as a young child that I'm not safe at home. And I always tried to be away from home, stay away from home, and just went outside, skateboarding until late in the night, playing basketball. I had good escapes and good things that actually taught me discipline and gave me a positive distraction, so to say. And luckily, I didn't drift off into negative aspects like drugs or stuff like this, you know. I could have drifted down that path as well. But my home wasn't safe. And when your home is like, you have your internal home and then you have your outside home. Like your home where you live in, that's the next home that you are. And then you step outside into the world. And if your second home, the home that you live in, not in here, but the second home, the physical home that you are, is not safe, you also are afraid of sharing that with the world. Because I associated a lot of shame with the situation of my brother. I didn't want people to know that. I felt ashamed when he wasn't when he had one of his episodes. So sometimes I had friends at my place and he was flipping out and doing his stuff, you know, and was very uncomfortable. And simply knowing that me being open and vulnerable and sharing stuff like this with the world, because I've worked through this and I can talk openly and confidently about it, because I've done a lot of internal work and a lot of forgiveness work, and I can talk about this openly now. But back in the past, I associated a lot of shame and a lot of discomfort with this, you know? So I didn't want people to come to my home, especially as a teenager, because I was afraid. My home was also very chaotic, you know. My mother was single. My parents divorced in an early age. So she tried to handle everything and she did her best. And then I also had my schizophrenic brother who, especially if he was in his episodes, caused a lot of chaos, not just energetically, but also externally in the home. And just tapping into this deeper, I noticed, okay, what's behind that fear of being seen? What's behind that fear of gaining traction? And what came up was every time I have traction, or every time I start to get seen by more people, I feel like pulling back because it's unsafe for me to be seen, or because people gonna judge me for that, or people gonna attack me, because some people in my past, and especially my childhood, used it against me. They then started making fun of me in front of other people, and I don't have any anger towards them anymore. They did the best from what they did, and we all do the best from what we know. But what I figured out on my path is that, especially with this fear of being seen and pulling back, it mainly came because I felt, or still sometimes feel, to be honest with you, but I can move with this feeling and move despite the fear and still show up here. Sometimes I feel like it's unsafe to be seen, that I will be attacked, that I will be judged, and then I will be shamed, And that is like the inner child, or the younger part inside of me that has been conditioned to feel that way, that has been conditioned to think that way. So if you want to put something out, if you feel like creating something and putting something out into the world, this is probably one of your biggest blocks, because you are not aware of what those beliefs are, those feelings are inside of you that sabotage yourself into that. You might be aware that every time you do it, you pull back and you sabotage yourself, or you hold yourself back from being there. You see yourself in a pattern, but you're not aware of what that pattern actually is. So ask yourself, what is it deep inside of me that's holding me back, that's putting me in the same position over and over again, that leads me to retreat and to hold myself back from what I actually want to experience. And you also have to be aware that every intention that you set, especially if you set a new intention, a thing that you want, there's most likely a opposing intention, something that's in conflict with what you say that you want. You might say, I want to be seen by millions of people. I don't think a lot of people say it like that. But maybe you say, I want to share my art and I want it to be seen by millions of people. My paintings, my music, my books, whatever you want to create. And I think we're all creative by nature, no matter who you are. And maybe you hold yourself back from that. You told yourself 1,000 times, I'm going to write that book. I'm going to start my own painting collection or start my own art gallery. I mean, you have to start somewhere. You're not going to start an art gallery like that. Or I'm going to release my first album, or I'm going to release my first song. But every time you're going to do it, you hold yourself back. And especially if you feel stuck in this rat race, so to say, in this day-to-day routine where you want to break out of your job, or you want to break out of this inauthentic way of living, where you feel like you play a role and you are not showing up as your authentic self. You really got to go deep within and ask yourself what's in conflict with those intentions that you set, or with what you say that you want. And that's why I also created something called the Root Pattern Decoder. It's a process I've created, and I'd say a tool rather, that shows you what those beliefs are for you. It shows you how to identify those intentions, and those intentions in a conflict is a 7-step process, and you can get that in the link in the description. But it's a really powerful tool to really become aware of those beliefs. But in essence, you really gotta just ask yourself, what is the fear behind the fear? And what am I not admitting to myself that's in the way of that, Because when you go deep and you ask yourself, okay, what part inside of me is actually holding me back? What part inside of me doesn't want that, even if I say I want that? And maybe you think to yourself, man, I want this so much, but it's not happening. Then you really got to go deep into the other side of it, and to the shadow beliefs, how I also like to call it. Because if you're not aware of that, if you don't clear that out, then you're always going to go back to that. And the Root Pattern Decoder helps with exactly this, no matter what situation it is in, whether it's your income, relationships, different parts, your creative expressions. It usually comes back to the same pattern, but this helps you to identify it. So you might want to get that. But it's really important to connect with those aspects and those parts inside of yourself. Because if you do, and if you become aware of them and don't act like they're not there, because if you ignore and avoid what's there, you just fuel it. Whatever you avoid, you start building resistance towards it. And that resistance, or the resistance of what is, just creates more of what is. So you have to face it first, and then you can shift it. That's why it also often doesn't work when you affirm something over and over, or you visualize all the time. It's not happening because you haven't cleared out the resistance. But once you clear out the resistance, you can step into it. And once you clear out the resistance of being seen, which I started doing, say in the past year, it's been one of my biggest tasks, one of my biggest assignments right now, because I feel called to do this and to show up here. Once you start clearing that out, you start stepping into that version that you feel inside, and you start showing up in the world as who you are, who you truly are, and what your soul wants you to be. And that's what it's ultimately about. You're not supposed to stay in a role that's not authentic to yourself. And we have multiple roles, you know. I'm an artist. I'm still creating music. I'm still sharing that with the world. So I have the role of the artist. At home, I'm a partner. I'm a son. Here I'm a teacher somehow, you know, whatever you want to call it. But I'm teaching some stuff. Don't consider myself a YouTuber. I rather use the word teacher. And we have different roles, you know. But your essence is your soul. That soul is limitless and doesn't have all of those limitations. So you just gotta take that soul and ask what roles are in alignment with what my soul wants to experience, and then own them fully. And when you own them, when you clear out the resistance, that's when things start to take traction, and that's when things start to feel good as well. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope it could clarify for you the essence of what's in the way and the fear behind the fear of being seen, because there's always something deeper. And if you just take one thing from this, is that you should always follow that calling inside of your soul, no matter what it is, and no matter what other people tell you. And even if you are going to be attacked, even if people try to tear you down, even if people are going to judge you, let them do that, because those people would have done it anyways. And even if people fall away from your circle, or people that used to be close to you all of a sudden start acting up strange, then it's also, it was going to happen anyways, you know. But you're here to step into your true self. You're here to own your divinity. You're here to own your divine nature and express it. Because when you express it, you can inspire other people. And if you stayed up until this point, I guess this inspired you. So why not do the same for other people in your own way, you know? And if not for other people, especially not for other people. I mean, you're doing it for other people. I'm not gonna lie. I hope this reaches the right people. But the most important thing is to do it because your creator, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, not in a religious way, is calling you to do it. That essence, that soul, that divine nature inside of you wants to express it. That should be your main reason, and the only reason that you actually need to start to express what's inside of you. So I hope this was helpful, and I thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I am Law Heru, and this is the Way of Law. Peace.